Secretary McMahon, you've claimed that you want to drastically reduce the already very small federal role in education, and also that you will not cut Title I-A funding. That is still your position, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I'd like a yes or no answer. Do you believe your April 3rd attempt to revoke Title I-A funding from states unless they signed a certification of compliance with your political viewpoint was consistent with giving states more control over education?
There's been no reduction in funding for Title I-A.
As of now. There has not been yet. But again,
right. And it is not in going forward in the budget.
So you believe that that's, so you do, okay. Yes or no, is Title I-A funding actually secure for every school district and state that currently receives it? Or is your goal to make Title I-A conditional on states refusing to provide students of color, LGBTQA students, students with disabilities, or other marginalized students opportunities to participate in diverse, inclusive, equitable, and accessible learning environments?
No, that's what I answered. I-A funding is intact.
Okay. So let's talk about so-called illegal DEI, as you all have called it, a phrase you've continually bring up, that I'm still unclear on, especially after 3 federal judges have preliminarily ruled that your illegal DEI guidance is likely unconstitutional and unenforceable, illegal, as it were. Secretary McMahon, during your confirmation hearing, you were asked by Senator Chris Murphy if an African-American history class violated the administration's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You said you'd like to look into it. You've been on the job for a few months now. Have you been able to look into it?
I do not think that African studies or Middle East studies or Chinese studies are part of DEI if they are taught as part of the total history package. So that if you're giving the facts on both sides, of course they're not DEI.
I don't know what both sides of African-American history would be.
Well, if African-American history is part of
certainly,
history,
but what we recognize throughout education is that a course is only 1 year or 1 semester. It would be impossible to teach African history and say European history at the same time. Do you not agree that it makes sense that there would be separate courses for these courses of study? It has happened throughout history. We're able to do it not just in history courses. We're able to do it with different types of literature courses or different types of music courses. One wouldn't learn about Baroque music and necessarily have to also learn about African drumming at the same time, right? We can separate those courses.
Yes, we can. And I think just as we teach U.S. history as a separate course.
Certainly. So you do not agree. So you do agree that African-American cultures and African history should not be eliminated from courses, particularly AP African history?
Well, I think that African history can certainly be taught and not be considered a DEI course.
Oh, thank you. I have a few other examples that I would like your thoughts on, simple yes or no. If this is a legal DEI, an example, would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa Race Massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa Race Massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
Okay, so I look forward to that. How about the book Through My Eyes by Ruby Bridges, for instance?
I haven't read that.
Have you learned about Ruby Bridges?
If you have specific examples you'd like
that
to
was a specific example.
I'll be very happy.
It was an incredibly specific example.
I named a specific questions,
book.
And I will look into it and get back to you on them.
Thank you. How about a school having a voluntary celebration for Pride Month?
Well, I think that...
voluntary.
Well, let's make sure that in our schools...
This is yes or no?
We're looking... No, it's not.
Okay. How about social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election?
I think our studies should all be taught accurately.
Yes or no?
I think our studies should
be taught accurately. The question was, do you believe that social studies standards that teach that President Biden won the 2020 election is an illegal DEI? Yes or no?
I think I have said we should teach accurately. We should.
No, you have not answered the question. Well, I don't understand why you're incapable of answering.
I'm just not giving you the answer you want.
No, I want the answer, whatever your answer is.
I just gave you the answer.
No, the answer is yes or no.
No, the answer is I think
the answer is yes or no.
Gentleladies,
thank you so much. I yield back.
Can you tell me why the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education is being decimated?
Well, it isn't being decimated. That's
what is it being?
We have reduced the size of it. However,
do you think
we are taking on a backlog of cases that were left over from the Biden administration.
Then why would you reduce the resources if you've got a backlog in addition to having confronted those cases that are going to come before you now?
Because we're working more efficiently in the department.
Okay, thank you. I've got real serious questions regarding your commitment to civil rights, to our students, to our teachers, to our faculty, and places of that nature. Do you believe that migrant students should have access to public education resources?
Well, migrant students do have access.
Do
at
you
this
believe
point.
that they should continue?
In some instances, yes.
Okay. Do you believe that the position of this administration to reduce the resources and the support to migrant students, at the same time they've encouraged and perhaps facilitated the coming to this country of white South Afrikaners?
I'm not sure.
Is an issue of favoritism and prioritization of white over color?
Well, if I am going to have to take a couple of minutes to answer this,
Well,
because
answer
this administration, President Trump has made it very clear that he will not tolerate discrimination, whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's race-related, at all on any of our schools.
Okay, I'm asking you.
I'm
asking you
well,
about
I'm going to
your
answer this
opinion,
question if I
because I'm
may.
going to tell you, I know what the president's position is. He's made it quite clear. I'm asking you, as the Secretary of Education, how you perceive this? Yes or no? If this is
I
not
am
an
the Secretary-
illustration of replacement and favoritism, say no. If it
I
is,
am-
say yes.
I am the Secretary of Education who has been approved to run this agency by Congress, and I was appointed by the President, and I serve at his pleasure under his mandate. So therefore,
Thank
the
you.
direction of his administration is what
appreciate
I will follow.
Do you recognize the fact that one of the important reasons that the federal government got into public education was to establish that there would be standards so that children would be treated equally in pursuing education, that states had been found to discriminate against black students in particular in many of the states, and that to send that responsibility and authority back to the states would just enhance those disparities, again, considering the environment in which this president continues to foster about who's important and who's not? Yes or no?
Congresswoman, there are laws on the books in Title VI that totally.
Laws don't mean
therefore-
anything to this administration. I'm asking you, do you realize that to send authority back to the states, to eliminate your oversight, to eliminate your accountability, to eliminate your determination as to resources going to schools that are teaching, public schools that are teaching underserved communities, that this will result in the very reason that we had to get the involvement of the federal government in this issue? And that's a yes or a no. Either you believe it or you don't.
It isn't a yes or no, but I will not respond to any question based on the theory that this administration doesn't care anything about the law and operates outside it. So
This
that is a
administration
mischaracterization, and I will
I
respond.
reclaim my time for 5 seconds, because you can say anything you want. Your rhetoric means nothing to me. What means something to me is the actions of this administration, from the President of the United States conducting himself in a corrupt manner to his family, enriching him and himself corruptly, to determine that this administration can tell you what's right, what's wrong, what's lawful, what's not, that it can arrest judges, it can arrest lawyers, it can use its power to bully people. And I'm telling you, the Department of Education is one of the most important departments in this country, and you should feel shameful to be engaged with an administration that doesn't give a damn.
Ms. Litlow.
I yield back.
I want to start with the role of the Department of Education. I come at this as a mother, as a grandmother, a former teacher myself, a former state legislator with 2 grandmothers who were public school teachers. I have a lot of experience with the education system in Pennsylvania as well as the country. First, the history of the federal education involvement, and Ms. Watson-Coleman was getting at some of this that I'd like to build upon. Federal investments in education began to increase dramatically in the 50s and 60s and 70s, in tandem with the rise of the success of the civil rights movement. Americans finally began to recognize the vast inequalities in our education system. Thus, federal funding was used to improve education access for students from poor backgrounds, or minority students, for women, for people with disabilities, and other marginalized groups. Finally, Congress established the Department of Education in 1979, replacing the Office of Education. Secretary McMahon, it's alarming that you and the President want to turn that clock back. You take us back to a time before any federal oversight of education, before many of the programs that guarantee free and equal access to education for all Americans. You said as much in your testimony. After all the Department of Education's work to ensure equal access to education, you're embarking on the department's final mission? You intend to put yourself out of a job? That's a little jarring to me. If you were a pediatric oncologist, I'd welcome that. Let's get you out of a job through cures, through healing, through ending of pediatric cancer. But ending a department that is supposed to oversee the education of our very youngest, to guide their future? Have you taken the time to educate yourself about this history? I'd encourage you, go ask students who attended school back then. Black students, brown students, students with disabilities, students from poor families. What was access like for them before the Department of Education? Frankly, eliminating the Department of Education, to me, is rather Orwellian. The President and his administration don't want an educated populace. Why don't we just go back to the book 1984 if it hasn't been banned? It's clear to me, this administration wants an uneducated electorate so that Mr. Trump and his courtiers can control thought, therefore control votes, and control the population. I'll note a secondary measure here that is going on. The increase in funding for charter schools. We know that charter schools originally were supposed to be incubators of the best ideas, great practices to be brought back into the public school education system so that every kid had an access to such things. But this administration and you, who want to put yourself out of a job, following the playbook, page 319 of Project 2025, first sentence, shutter the Department of Education. You're all following the book, that book. Too bad that one wasn't banned. And yet, privatizing is really the other ambition, an uneducated electorate and profit and privatization of our education system. Do you promise us that that isn't your ambition?
That clearly is not my ambition. I think I've stated that very well today.
Then why in God's name do you want to shutter it? Why don't you want to protect kids with disabilities? Why don't you want to protect kids who have been every decade denied equal access simply because of how much their parents make, the zip code they live in, the color of their skin? Why are you shuttering a department that's supposed to lift up those children?
Because those programs don't have to flow through the Department of Education, and they
can flow through the state. I was a state legislator. That's called shift and shaft. I've spoken with the governor of Pennsylvania. They can't pick up the tab anymore for education of our students. Not to mention, it would be inequitable by state, by state, by state. Why are you in this job at all? If you don't have a dedication to the future of our children, why are you in this job?
I, too, am a mother and a grandmother, and I want the best for my family going forward.
Vouchers.
For my grandchildren, for my great-grandchildren, and I hope to leave a legacy that we have established best practices for education that all the states can use. That would be a great legacy to be able to leave, to be able to show states these are some of the things that they can do. I think states have to look at their budgets.
Madam Secretary, the legacy you will be leaving is that I shut down the Department of Education. How we educate our children determines not just their future, but our own. But I think it's a sad legacy you will leave. I yield back.
The Department of Education is not educating anyone. Well, I can say this, and I will.
It's interesting. I took a lot of notes. I had prepared questions, but I think I'm going in a very different direction. We've heard other colleagues talk about the NAEP